I see, it's very different today. Now am I talking about writing, so I'm going to guess today I sound like James Lipton. You have a question there. You have blue-greenish hair today. I love that.
I write a lot of stories at my house, and I just worry that a lot of my characters tend to sound the same, and I just wonder how to convey different emotions to these characters, because they all have different personalities.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up, and that's one thing as a writer, and kind of building on what I just said earlier. That's always a thing when you're starting out for years, you know. And the best piece of advice anyone ever gave me on anything artistic is that you have a lot of it. In the case of writing, you personally, and I don't know you, so this is not a judgment, but I mean, you personally have a lot of bad stories in you that you have to get out before you can find the good stuff. It's digging. It's how you find your voice. And if you find your characters all sounding very much alike, that's because you're still, you know, you're still finding your voice. And so you're in that stage where writing becomes a kind of personal therapy. You're using it to kind of work out problems in your head. So these characters really turn out on the page to be just a bunch of different versions of you, sort of hashing out different ideas. And there's nothing wrong with that. And you know, that's just part of the process. But just as I would tell, you know, this young woman in the back to read outside her comfort zone, and I would tell you to do the same thing, force yourself to write characters that are nothing like you. Go and people watch. It's something I love to do. Don't creep about it. Don't be a creeper. Don't be like... And I say it, but it's important to go out into the real world and watch people. I think one of the biggest disadvantages to writers now is television and various social media. Because writers, and I'm sure most of you who do write will agree with me, writers tend to be a very introverted and private lot. We don't like to put ourselves out there. We're sometimes a little shy, we're a little wallflowerish. It's partly why we write, you know? I mean, it's why I read as a kid. I was a very awkward child. I didn't have much of a social life to speak of. And the reason I became so well read is because I gravitated to books, because in those pages were, I was a very lonely child, so in those pages were sort of the surrogates for the flesh and blood friends I had trouble making. But, you know, the thing is, so being shy, we're reluctant to go out in public and kind of engage with people just to kind of see, how does this person think, what makes them tick? Because it's difficult. There's always an exchange, and there's always a risk in that exchange. You know, someone may think you're weird, you may be rejected, what have you. But you have to force yourself to do it, because if you do what a lot of writers do now and just watch television, or you know, whatever, you end up writing characters that just are derived from this two-dimensional medium that end up becoming just kind of a blank echo of what's already an echo on the screen. So rather than writing from life, you're writing from someone else who's written from life, or someone else who's written from someone else who's written from life, and so on and so forth. And the further away you get from real life, the stodgier your characters are, the less real they seem, or the more like you, because you've not kind of thrown yourself out into the mix enough to find out everything there is inside of you. You know what I mean? You have to really go and kind of test yourself out in the real world in order to find everything there is inside of you. As an actor, I'm constantly having to remind myself when I'm playing a character that seems nothing like me that it doesn't matter. Somewhere inside of me is this guy. Somewhere inside of me is this person who I disagree with on every level, consciously. But, you know, the same raw materials are in